Welcome back, or two. We haven't decided yet. If I remember correctly, with Danielle question mark and Ryan Brooke.
You still haven't figured out what my name is?
Well, you said, "What am I going to go with?" I said, "What's your last name now?" And you said, What do I want to go with?"
This is so crazy because I didn't even think about this. So Danielle Gates is what I've always
Into the
used.
microphone, love.
What?
Right into the microphone. There you go.
I have to go closer. I can't lay
Yeah,
down.
no.
I want a podcast where I can lay down. So Danielle Gates is always what I use.
Right. Okay. Well, legally, can we say legally what your name is or no?
Well, not really, because then I changed it to Geronimo. My last trip to New York, so like April or March, it became Geronimo on my license and my social security card, but I never changed my passport, which right now is a problem. But so yeah, it's whatever you want it to be, really. It's whatever you want it to be. I have like one credit card with my maiden name that will not be named. I have my most of the things that will not be named.
Are you embarrassed by that name?
There's so many things attached to that name that I just disassociate from it.
Yeah, but the audience doesn't know that.
Yeah,
might be
but
something you know.
It's also like my family. Like I want to keep my life very separate from my family, and so there's only us. We're the only ones in the country. So the more I don't address that name, the more I can keep that separate. Does that sound ridiculous?
No, I just want to know what to go to call you.
Yeah. So Danielle Gates, I think, is what everybody calls me.
I know for a while you said you would keep that name mostly, I think, for your son because it's your son's.
What, my maiden name?
No, it's not your son's name. That's right. Your son has the unspoken name. Yeah, you got some story, kiddo. All right. So
why did you just call me kiddo? That is like so condescending.
This is it's loving.
No, it's not. It's white man shit. It really is.
Have you seen me?
Don't ever call a woman kiddo. I'm just giving you advice.
But I don't call only. First of all, that's not something I say frequently. That was something that was
yes, people say to me because I'm little.
Oh no!
Yes,
but I call men sweetie. Like I'm a very
I don't know that I've ever heard you call a man sweetie.
When have you been around me and other men? Like you've only been around me
and Matt. It's the only man that was ever really around you.
Yeah. So this is a podcast about, I guess, relationships in general. So here's the deal. We just recorded an episode. You felt like maybe we were all over the place. The sound wasn't great. So maybe somebody will hear it in the future. But we're going to do a little restart. So we might, I don't know, reference things that we talked about just a minute ago. But restarting, I did like the beginning of it when I said that this is, our relationship goes back over 20 years. Mm-hmm. Yet I don't know much about your life currently. Mm-hmm.
Then why did you agree to do this?
Well, because we always have good conversations, and I like talking into a microphone. I have another podcast, and I like that, but it's a whole different vibe.
What is that podcast about?
It's called Adult Babies. It's a podcast I just joined. Like they had it going, and I was a guest on it. I'm like, your podcast looks like garbage. It sounds like garbage. I'm like, I can fix all this. So they
feature me.
Yeah. So they were looking for a producer. So I started producing it, but I'm like, do you want me to just produce it? I was like, no, I'll be on it. So now I'm just on this podcast with two other white, bald truck drivers. And it was just all coincidence. Like the fact that we're so similar is coincidence. But we're all.
I'm sorry. Can I stop you there? Coincidence. It's coincidence that you and two other white, bald truck drivers are on a podcast and you don't believe in magic. You think that's just chance?
Well, it's one of them is a comic that we just met through somebody else, and the other one was a friend of his from years back. So. And
you don't think that at all?
But the podcast
that you guys interacted was at all divine. Like how did you all end up in the same place at the same time?
Because there's a lot of because I live on an island where all the white bald men
There's
are.
quite a few white bald truck drivers in Queens as well.
We're getting off track again, but so I agreed to this podcast because
I feel like every time you have to be reflective about anything about you, we're off track because we're only supposed to talk about me being reflective about
the
my
last episode we did. We talked about me quite a bit,
we did.
And I thought I liked the episode. I thought we should use it, and you said we're all over the place. Yeah, we talked about my life so much.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
all right, maybe I'm crazy.
I'm very open. I'm ready to give my contribution to my life for you to bounce off of your life and. But, so I've known you for over 20 years, over 23 years, I guess, probably around 23 years.
My son was 6 months old when we met. And he's going to be 23 in December.
Okay, so yeah, around that time. But I don't know anything about 90 Day Fiance. I don't know this world. I discovered you were on the show because of your son's TikTok, was how I even knew that this happened. But I see you post things and I forget that you're even on the show. So a lot of this audience will initially be 90 Day fans because your reach when you post it, this is going to be people you listen to.
Wait, so can I stop you there? Who am I as a person? Like, okay, you've never seen 90 Day Fiance. So you've known me for 20, however many years, 23 years. Who am I as a person? When I say to you, like, who am I? How would you answer that question? What kind of person am I?
You're a...
and I need you to be honest. Like, be very honest.
Yeah, that's hard. It's hard to sum somebody up. I mean, you're very dynamic, so it's hard to just sum you up in like that. Like, I mean, dynamic is how I would describe you. And I always found it interesting how you were so spiritual and, you all these things, but you were a little bit street as well. Like you had a good mix of reality and also this other magic in your life. We've always had good conversations about disagreeing about you. Like I live in the real world. No, that sounds dismissive. I apologize. I didn't mean that. But we just said in the last podcast, so I'm very logical and I'm always looking for explanations to things that you kind of just accept as, I mean, we keep saying magic, but is there another word that we can use to seem
I guess it depends on what you're talking about.
Right.
Because I use magic to be facetious, but I mean, what are we really talking about? Are you talking about the law of attraction? Are you talking about spirituality and religion? Like,
right.
There's like different categories of magic. And I think that when some people look at me, like I remember there was a time that my brother called me and he's like, can you fucking stop talking about energy on Facebook? Like my friends keep calling me like, what the fuck's wrong with your sister? And I was like, fuck you, bro. Like I had lived for so long in a bubble where everybody is into what I'm into. And like one of the things about the spiritual practices that I engage in is that it's pretty niche. It seems like it's trendy and popular, but it really isn't. Like I think that there's TikToks about crystals and people think that's what I do, but that's not really what I do. So like the world that I live in involves purging your life of things that are not in alignment with your values. So I no longer follow the Shade Room. I no longer follow like any accounts, like all the comedy accounts. I really don't follow any of them because I don't actually find a lot of that shit funny anymore. Like I don't find making fun of people funny anymore. I don't find, self-deprecation funny anymore. I don't find a lot of things that I used to engage with and be a part, like sarcasm. Like I'm like such a sarcastic bitch, right? Like I don't really try to send energy to that anymore. So I do in a way I don't live in the real world because I recognize that is the real world. The real world is commentary on everything, especially with this, right? Like this is all commentary. Mm-hmm. All we consume is commentary. It's like there's very little original thought anymore. And so I don't live in that real world. So whenever someone is like, well, what the fuck is this magic shit? I'm like, I don't even know where to begin with you.
Right.
Because I don't know. I've never been a good entry level teacher. I've never been a good first year teacher. I've never been a good like, oh, you've never read before. Let me teach you how to read. I'm good for in all aspects of life. Like, oh, I've read this book. I don't understand it. Tell me your perspective on it. Let's have a conversation.
Right.
That's where I'm good. So it's hard for me to say when someone's like, what is magic? I don't know where to go, but if you're like, what is Reiki? I can answer that question. If you ask, what is an altar for? I can answer that question. Right. But if you're like, what is magic? I'm like, give me 6 years to sit down with you.
Right. It's almost like, I remember a friend of mine was talking about teaching his niece, like he was going over simple math homework, and the idea of teaching like 2 + 2 to somebody. It's like, and then he's like, he said was like, well, just add it up. And it's like, and it's like you're looking at a brain. It's like you're trying to form his brain. It's like, how could you not know? It's 2 + 2. Like Cheerios. That's literally like the joke of like how simple something could be.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, I don't know what add it up means, and you just can't wrap your head around that.
Yes.
It's like,
And
have two.
I have so much, like the girl I stay with in New York, she's a pre-K teacher. And oh my God, like I give her so much credit because I can't even teach high school freshmen. Like I have to have seniors because
Right.
I can't, like I'm just not particular. It's never been my skill set to be like, this is how you sound out words or this is how you decode language. And it was such a fucking culture shock when I started teaching at an international school. And that was my first job. First year was global history, which I hadn't taught in 15 years. And first year immigrants, they just got here like yesterday. Not a word of English. Some of them don't even have languages that you can translate. They have tribal languages. So it was really like a rude awakening for me. Like, this is everything you're bad at.
Right.
I can't go with colloquialisms. I can't make jokes in the classroom. Like, nobody understands a fucking word I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so it was like I had to learn how to be that kind of teacher and explain things in that way. And it was very, very hard for me. And then I had to do it during COVID on a screen where nobody knew how to use a computer. It was like this is why I believe so much in divinity, because that was God's way of saying, like, okay, you've worked on this, you've worked on this, you've worked on this, you've completely avoided this and thought that you could live your whole life avoiding this. And you really think you're a good teacher? Let's see how good you are.
Yeah.
Let's see when we take you out of your comfort zone and this little ridiculous niche of teaching social movements to high school seniors.
Yeah.
I got to really create a dream life for myself as a teacher, and
not
I wasn't
realistic.
really growing, and it wasn't realistic. And it took me having to do this, and that kind of prepared me for dealing with my husband, who didn't speak a word of English and also had like some cognitive issues that made learning for him hard. So that prepared me for him.
Okay, so that's getting into a whole different thing. So I'm definitely interested in learning how you came to be on this show and why and how you found it. And as somebody who really is it's so foreign to me. I can't.
It was foreign to
I
me
really,
too.
I really just think it's so funny that there's people that know you only as this, and I hope that it's interesting to have a conversation with somebody who literally doesn't know you like that at all, to give an outside perspective of like somebody who might hate you from watching you by a little bit on
I
TV.
feel like you should have watched the shows.
I
before we
don't. I
sat
just like. Again, I don't want to keep referencing the podcast that we just did that I'm not going to record, but I don't watch a lot of TV to start with, and if I did, it's just not going to be reality based television. I don't have.
But I think in preparation for this job,
Yeah,
for this
right.
work that we're doing.
I also we decided to do this a couple weeks ago, and I just happened to have had a very busy 2 weeks. Like I literally couldn't have fit. Watching
it's
that
not
stuff
in
in.
judgment.
I'm not against it. But first of all, how would I do that? How would I watch the show?
You could watch it.
Like
So
your
it's
segments.
on television on TLC. If you had cable, you would watch it on Mondays at 8:00. But it's a bunch of different couples. If you just wanted to watch my segments, you could go on Max. I don't know if Discovery Plus is still a thing anymore because Max bought Time Warner bought everything.
Okay.
So you'd watch it on Max, and you could watch Love in Paradise season 2, and then 90 Day the Other Way seasons 4 and 5.
And then just fast forward. Then when you're not on screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could do that unless you get hooked and you want to watch all the things, because I've heard that some people have done that. with
Yeah,
90
no, and
Day Fiancé.
I know men my age and demographic who like the show. They talk about it like it's.
Do you tell them that you know a girl who's on it?
No, but I did once. So I posted on one of my photography. I posted some because I had taken pictures of you years ago, and I posted them on my portfolio Instagram page. And again, forgetting that you were on the show. I had a couple people DM me, "How do you know the girl from 90 Day?" and I responded, I said, "Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that she's on TV. I forgot that anybody might know this person." So and one girl lives up the road from where I used to live. I'm like, she used to be your neighbor. So
Who's the girl?
a girl Lauren, I went on a few dates with, and I just
What's her last
remained.
name?
I don't remember. We went on a few dates, and we stayed Instagram friends. I was actually gonna think like a segment of the show would be like my red flag for this episode, because I feel like I'm always every day I think like that's a red flag of mine, or that's a
You are a red flag. You are problems.
Yeah. And when people always say like, "Oh, what's your red flag?" I'm always like, "I only get one." Like I feel like I have a list of them that I have, But one of mine is that I stay friends with if I go on one date with somebody, I'm like, we should stay friends forever though. Like even if it's just like social media, like why do I need to feel like not everybody. If I have any I like this person was fun. Like we had a few dates that were great. It just didn't.
I
take
keep
off.
everyone on my social media as well. I think that one of the things. So if you ever watch the show, our whole storyline for season 4 was me being friends with my ex. And basically so a couple of things I guess I can answer your first question is how I ended up on the show.
Yeah.
That I can talk about. My friend is a crazy fan, and I was going to Dominican Republic with my aunt Savannah, and when I was going there, she said, "Make sure you don't come home with a Jose, like don't come home with a husband." And I was like, "Clearly, that's not going to happen. That's not something I do on vacation. I don't typically come home with husbands." And I went to Dominican Republic and came home with a husband. I wasn't married at the time, but I met him while I was there. He gave his phone number to my cousin to give to me. I had no intention of contacting him. However, my friend who was in the Dominican Republic at the time, I don't know if friend is the appropriate word to use for this human, but I had asked him if he would take me and my family somewhere to look for Larimar or something. I forget where it was, but it was during COVID and there was still a curfew in Santo Domingo where he was, and I was really far away in La Romana. And he's like, "I'm not going to make it back in time." And I'm like, "I'm not doing this by myself because I don't know how to drive around here." And I'm like, "Let me message this kid." Because he was 6'7" and like enormous, super cute. I mean, I'm a sucker for a cute boy. I don't think that's a secret.
Listen, I'm a sucker for a cute boy. Like,
yeah, I was like, I feel like he'd keep me safe. Like there was something about him that I was
just
like,
his presence near you.
I would trust him. And when I did message him, I was like, "Listen, I got your phone number. My cousin gave me your phone number. This is what I'm looking for. If this is something that, you'd be interested in doing, I'm happy to pay you, And he's like, "Absolutely. I'll do it on my day off." I was like, "I need a picture of your ID." And he sent me a picture of his ID immediately. And I was like, okay, I don't have anything to worry. It said that he was single. Like the cedula in Dominican Republic, like their identification, it's kind of like the equivalent of like a combination of your driver's license, your passport, and your social security card. It's like every piece of information you need about yourself is like kind of connected to this document. So when someone shares it with you, it makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
This is what I thought at that time. This is what I knew of Dominican Republic and my Dominican students and my Dominican friends. And like, that was kind of for me. So I was drunk and I messaged my friend Sandra. I'm like, "Hi, I'm not coming home with Jose, but I'm coming home with Johan." Da, da. She's like, "Oh my God, you have to write to 90 Day Fiance." And she sent me casting info. And I'm just like, didn't really pay much attention because I wasn't dating this person. And then we went out for the day and I was like, maybe I will date this person. And we like hung out a couple of times during the trip. And I was like, I'm going to do this. This is the chapter of my life that I'm in. And it was after a bunch of like astrologers and tarot readers, like all the spiritual mentors that I was working with over the last 2 years, they'd all told me that I was going to have a foreign husband. And I was like, this was too easy, and maybe it's supposed to be easy right now. And I messaged the casting team when I was drinking, and they got back to me like almost immediately. And I mean, we got married 5 months after we were dating, and that was filmed. So
Okay.
It was fucking quick.
Yeah. So I think the last I was informed I knew about you was I guess you were talking to this guy and dating because I knew there was like a potential of this basketball player. He's the basketball player?
No, the basketball player was before him.
Oh, he's not the basketball player.
No, basketball player
Wasn't he Dominican as well?
No, he was not Dominican, and we were never having a conversation about a future.
This is a whole different thing then.
This is a whole different thing.
Because that
was Talon. He was the subject of season 4. He was in Miami.
So you stayed friends with him?
Yes, I stayed friends with him.
That was a problem.
That was a problem for Johan.
And
you thought I married the basketball player. This whole time you thought I was on 90 Day Fiance with a Dominican basketball player.
Yeah,
this is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
That you just sat down with me to have this conversation about something you know nothing about. You were just like, yeah, I'm down. Let's do it.
But the point was that I was interested in learning more about this. So that's great.
That's great, he says.
So that was the friend who he and Jan
Yeah.
didn't like that you were friends with this guy. But you've been friends. We haven't really talked since you've been with this guy, but you're friends with a lot of men and a lot of exes and
Dominicans don't like that.
Yeah, no, I mean that's not a Dominican based thing. That's there's people here. Like I'm friends with a lot of women, and it's hard to find a woman who's okay.
So I guess, and again, this is another way that like this isn't the world I live in. This is no longer the world I live in. I know that this is the world that people live in, but it's just not the world I live in anymore. And at the jump, I'm always very clear with people. These are my friends. These are my colleagues. I own a business. As a woman who owns a business, you have no choice but to do business with men. You have no choice but to hire men. You have no choice but to work with men. It is impossible. I don't want to say it's impossible. Maybe I'm being dramatic. It is very hard to do international business and never work with them.
Oh,
So-
I imagine so, yeah.
So, like, I think it's fair for women to say your relationships with women have to be limited. I don't think it's fair to say to a woman your relationships with men have to be limited because we can't function in the world without having to work with men.
Were you talking about, did he have problems if you had a professional relationship with a man?
My
Oh, well,
meditation teacher
that's a whole other
that
thing.
works with me. Anytime I had to do a Zoom call with my, I filmed
Okay,
a
so-
documentary over 2 years. I had to do a Zoom call, at his parents' house, and it was with a man, and it was a problem.
So you dated another Dominican guy
Mm-hmm.
years and years ago, and that was the same
Same
thing.
fucking problem. I've had 3. This is my 3rd Dominican partner, and all 3 of them are equally crazy. It's just the one in between had a partner, so he couldn't really be as much of a dick, but he was still crazy. He was still crazy. Still,
Yeah.
I was supposed to be the only. He was supposed to be the only guy I was with, even though there were 11 of me. And that was a
that's-
reasonable thing in his head because he thought that because he took care of me. And he was the only one who ever really took care of me. The other 2 I took care of. So I was like, if I'm fucking taking care of you, you don't get to make the rules.
Yeah.
There has to be a given. Like people say I don't compromise. I compromise. You pay my fucking bills, I'll listen to your rules. Honestly.
Yeah.
But when I'm paying the bills, there are
Yeah,
no
you gotta
rules.
be, there gotta be something. It can't be 100%
No, get
one
the
way.
fuck out of here.
Yeah.
People are really unreasonable with their expectations of what women are supposed to do, and it's because we allow it. You know what's so crazy to me? You don't know this unless you Google me, but like I am the villain of season 4. I don't know if I'm the villain of season 5, but everybody fucking hates my guts on the internet. Like hates my guts. The amount of hate.
I don't know that, but you've mentioned that it's
It's intense. I don't really engage with it, so I don't. Sorry, you can see like my mosquito bites. I'm like scratching them. There's so many. I don't really engage with it direct unless it comes directly to my page, which is not quite as often. But it's really interesting to me how much hate I get because I have boundaries, and because I date a poor man in a third world country. 5 weeks after we started dating, he was given a television show. And I have expectations that he should use the resources and the opportunities that television show granted him in order to build a life for himself and to build a life for us. Help me build a life for us.
Right.
And the primary problem that shows up in season 4 and season 5 is it my responsibility to take care of this man because that's what I get for meeting a man in the Dominican Republic in a third world country that has been colonized by my people. And that is a really hard question to answer. Like, what should my expectations of him be? My expectations with my American mentality are when you are given opportunities, you take them. And if you choose not to take them, that's on you. But you can't expect someone else to take care of you because you choose not to take those opportunities.
Okay, so what do you want his life to be that it isn't, that he's like, what are his desires that you feel like he's not going after that you wish he would?
So he said to me, I was like, what's your dream life look like? That's when I date people, I'm not asking the same questions that I think most people are asking. I am asking, what time are you born? What's your birthday? What time are you born? I'm asking, what does your dream life look like? Because if you tell me what your dream life looks like and it's nowhere near what my dream life looks like, there's no point in having any other conversations, right? Like I'm going to end the conversation right there. So what does your dream life look like? I really would love to be a personal trainer. Well, that's fucking easy. You're 6'7", beautiful, not an ounce of fat on your body.
Yeah.
Charming as hell.
I guess that's
great
why
smile.
I thought he was a basketball player. I guess I saw him and I was like, oh, this must be this tall.
Yeah. No, Taylor was like 6'4",
Yeah,
6'6".
Right. Okay. So he said he speaks no English.
Not a word of English.
Do you speak Spanish?
Yeah.
Fluently? Okay. I thought that maybe you did. I wasn't.
I
100%
speak it
sure.
enough to be able to.
Communicate with him.
Right now, I speak it enough to be engaged in a relationship. When we first met, it was very hard.
Can you have? Because I've been on dates with women who speak very little English, and and I need to have deep conversations with somebody that I'm with, and it's really difficult. You can communicate with somebody. You can say, "Hey, can you get me? What do you want for dinner?" You can communicate that. It's like the logistical things you can communicate, but it's like to really get into it. you need to have a full grasp of both like the same language. Because there's one girl, she was Colombian and she was like from Colombia, and I enjoyed her company, and she couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to date her. And I'm like, we watched a movie together, and like in like we watched the Spanish language movie, and I watched the American subtitles. So but I'm like, afterwards I couldn't really talk about what I liked about the movie because she just wouldn't understand it, and it's like.
So there's two parts to it. When in the beginning, I thought it was language. And so I learned Spanish because I'm like, this is going to be hard. This is my problem. This is always my fucking problem. Like, okay, what are the problems in the relationship? Oh, I'll just learn Spanish. That's fixable. That's so fixable.
I'll give you credit. I by the way, I've like, my life would be so much easier if I just learned Spanish, and I've tried. I don't know if I don't have the brain for it.
No,
if I give in
you
too
have to
easily.
live in a foreign country.
You have to just immerse yourself.
You do. So you have to understand, I worked in restaurants, although you know this from like your job too. I worked in restaurants, so the kitchen always speaks Spanish. And my bar backs always spoke Spanish when I bartended. Then teaching in New York City, half your kids are Dominican. It doesn't matter what school, where you live. Yeah. All your kids are Dominican and Puerto Rican. And if you're in a public school, because all the kids who are not Dominican and Puerto Rican, the majority of them especially now go to private school. So if you don't speak Spanish, you can't engage with any of the parents. You have a really hard time with new immigrant students. So it's like you kind of have to learn some Spanish in order to do your job as a teacher in New York City. I do have colleagues in an international school who speak not one word of Spanish. And I just wouldn't be able to do my job that way. My first year teaching at Ellis, I was like, I'm sitting up in front of a classroom trying to speak in English and no one can understand me. And they were just supposed to figure it out. And it was so ridiculous. I'm like, okay, this clearly isn't going to work. I'm going to have to figure out what top is so I can show top of the page, and so many words in Spanish are cognates. So it's like, I kind of just had to. It was my job. I didn't have a choice. I think that, and then dealing with Johan and having a conversation with him every single day, constantly having to use Google Translate, constantly having to have my computer open to translate something, to have a video it was really hard. And so in the beginning, I actually thought that a lot of our problems were language-based. And as soon as I learned the language, that a lot of our problems would actually dissipate. And my first field producer that I worked with on Love in Paradise, she was Puerto Rican and she spoke Spanish. And she said, I'm not sure if this is language or a character trait. And I didn't believe her. And I should have believed her.
Everybody wants to believe.
Yeah, whatever they want to believe, because I was filming a television show with the man I was going to marry. This could be wrong. Of course, because otherwise, this is the biggest fuck up of my life.
As I just said earlier on the last podcast, but it's a journey. It's an experience. It's a thing. Like if you just enjoy it for what it is, it's not a huge
This has been such an amazing experience. I have met the coolest people. I've learned so much. I love DR. I would never have ended up in DR if it wasn't him, and that's really where I see myself spending a lot of my time.
Yeah. So you still go there?
So I live there.
You live there.
I'm right now for the next couple of months. I'm the primary caretaker for my grandmother, so I'm going to be spending most of my time in Florida. I had to cancel a lot of my trips and things I have coming up moving forward, but that's where I plan to end up, is Cabadete.
Okay.
I love DR.
Fascinating. Yeah. So do you think that you were truly the villain, or do you think that you see... My opinion of the show, or it seems to be, is that none of the viewers like anybody on the show. It seems like they hate watch all of it, and they like it and like to criticize it.
Is that a thing? So I guess you live in the commentary world, so maybe you can speak to that even from a comedic perspective. Is that a thing that you just make fun of everything?
I don't like to make fun of everything. I'm not. I am in the comedy world. I enjoy listening to podcasts. I actually want to get back to that. I think it's truly is a whole different episode. Is your opinion on comedy and what you think is funny and what you don't think is funny. That and when you said that, and it fascinates me. And I don't necessarily disagree, because I don't like making fun of people. I don't think that's funny. I like to be a little bit progressive with humor, but it's hard to find where the comedy is in a world like that. But I would rather be on the side of not hurting somebody's feelings and not, I don't know, there's a comic, Todd Glass, and I just look up to him so much because he is able to make progressive funny. Like he points out how ridiculous people is. Oh, you can't say anything anymore. Like people, everyone says, you got to have these kids with a week with a peanut allergy. Like he makes fun of the people who don't progress. And it's like, there's comedy there. Like he's a kind person. He's nothing but heart on stage, and he's one of the funniest people to exist. So
and I somehow, you have never sent me a clip of him. You have to send it to me.
Yeah, I will. And I think, it's easy. Like people say, oh, it's just comedy. It's funny. And we're just making fun of people. Yes, but that's easy. And your job is like, if it's, anybody can do it then. Like the whole point of talent is that it's impressive and it's like to work towards it.
It's original.
And and
commentary is not original.
It's like comedy, people. I understand why comics are funny, and people go up and they use words that I don't like to use, and they make little, they make little of things that are big to me. And it's like, oh, it's funny, yeah, it's funny. Like people laugh along. I said, yeah, but that's not a craft. Like, don't you want to work at something like this? If it's the first thought comes to your mind, maybe give it a second thought, and find where the funny is on an angle that nobody's ever taken before. So.
It reminds me, remember Howard Stern, this is so many decades ago probably, he said, all you have to do to get people to cheer for you when you get on stage is just scream fuck. Like you just have to go, fuck! And everyone's like, fuck! And it's like, what the fuck are we cheering for? It's just
people are largely idiots.
And it's like, you just show a picture of tits, and it's like people will engage with it. So if that is the general population, and we're creating content for that population, then 90 Day Fiancé is doing an amazing job, because they create, I think it's like 12 or 13 or 14 spinoffs at this point, because like every season there's a new one of the original 90 Day Fiancé. Like that's a fucking gold mine. Like it's a network in and of itself, 90 Day Fiancé. So the formula is clearly working, and the formula is, let's take shit that shows up in every relationship. Like there's the idea of another man, of women being friends with men. That shows up in every single relationship, right? There's going to be a point in any long-term relationship.
Most, I don't know every single, but most,
I've never seen, as someone who works with women, or been in a relationship where the idea of someone of the opposite sex, or someone that you could, of the same sex that you might potentially want to have sex with, would not show up. I've never seen that.
I've lived on Long Island for 43 years, and I've lived in, I've been in very religious communities and with women who, like to fall in line and would never think of speaking to another man because they wouldn't like the way it makes her husband feel. Like that those people exist.
But I think it's still a conversation that someone's having. It's never something that you never have to talk about ever in a relationship.
I'm not in these relationships, but sometimes I'm spending time with a couple, and I'm like, they've never had a conversation
Should we close
about.
that door?
I think I did close it. That'd be all right. I'm like, they've never had a conversation about any of this. It's just not in their world to be like.
I guess we just live in different worlds.
Listen, I've had the conversation. I'm saying I've had that conversation plenty of times about it, because I'm friends with women, and I enjoy the company of women more than men. That's just I've been my whole life. I've grown up with women. I've grew up in a house with women. I'm more comfortable with women. I've like recently discovered that like men like largely just make me feel uncomfortable, and it's not because I don't like them. It's because I've had my relationships with men in the past have gone wrong. They've moved away. I always feel like, am I going to be judged by this person? I'm a sensitive person. Like it's not welcome in my community to be like a sensitive man. I've found guys who I feel comfortable with eventually, but it's not I always have a guard up with the man. I'm like, is this somebody that I'm going to feel like I can be myself with, and if I'm emotional, can I express myself to them? And I'm always assume no, like that's like my baseline is like no. And when I look for a therapist, I always look for a woman. And my last therapist was a man, and he was like really warm and sensitive. I'm like, oh, this is what I've needed the whole time. I need a man that I feel comfortable with to make me feel like I can talk to a man and not feel like I'm, a weak. I'm not fitting into a box that I need to be in.
Yeah. Long Island will do that.
What?
Long Island will do that to you.
Yeah. And I like Long Island. I've found people that I love on Long Island. It's not the majority by any means, but I kind of like being an outsider. Like I enjoy that. I like coming to the city and feeling like, oh, these are my people. But I don't mind going back to the city feeling a little bit superior to the people that I live around, because I'm like you people, you have no idea. Like I hate it a lot because there's a lot of hate around me, but I find humor in, like I'm able to find humor in it. I'm privileged enough to find humor in the hate, and I'm not really affected by it.
I think that there's a safety in being the smartest person in the room,
Of course.
but you'll never. I shouldn't say you. I've never elevated being the smartest person in the room, or that's such a narcissistic thing to say. Even feeling like the most educated person in the room, or having traveled the most in the room, or having diverse life experiences more than other people in the room, the oldest person in the room. Like, I've found that I've never grown by constantly having people that I had to be like explain shit to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The times that I've grown the most is where I've been thrown into situations where I knew nothing, like absolutely nothing. But like my job at an international school, I walked in there knowing nothing. And my job at when I taught on the Upper West Side, like I went in there with a Long Island mentality, a test prep mentality, and I knew nothing about what my principal was trying to do. So like those are the places that I really evolve and grow. So I actually have used to only have guy friends. Like you probably remember that also. Like I always spent a lot of my time with men for the same reason, because women judge, because they make you feel uncomfortable, because they're catty, because they're jealous, because they're insecure. But they're all those things because of men. They're all those things because of how men treat them and make them feel. And so they compete for a little bit of attention for someone who's not even worthy. So I find that like when I surround myself with secure women and confident women and women who are trying to run shit and women who get who they are and can be comfortable in their own skin, that's when I elevate, because women can do it all. Like women can do the emotional sensitive piece, but they also have historically, biologically have to run shit. Mm-hmm. Women ran everything while men hunted and gathered. Women did everything else. In many cultures, women run the finances. Women manage the household. Women pay all the bills. Like that's very customary in a lot of traditions and indigenous, practices. Even like they managed bartering. They worked in the markets. And so like now we have this like very modern mentality of women, I don't know, needing to be like the sensitive ones or the emotional ones, and like that's our primary role. And men come to us for that work. They come to us for what we're innately supposed to offer them. And men are supposed to be the providers and the ones that are strong and keeping it together. But what I'm seeing is a lot of men who don't want to do any of that, because women have said, oh, we want equal pay, we want equal work, we want equal this. And so you have a lot of men who are being like, all right, and I ain't doing shit anymore. I'll split the rent, no problem. And so now women are almost complaining that they have to do it all, but we're allowing it to happen.
I haven't heard women complaining they have to do it all. I mean, I think they're complaining.
Life swap?
I think they're complaining that it's hard but I don't think that they're saying I regret wanting all of this. I think life is hard for everybody. If you're trying to work and if you're trying to have a family, like life, it's difficult to balance all that. So they're not they're just more. They feel more open to complain about how hard it is. Men are supposed to be stoic and not, and like things are not supposed to.
Well, I don't know any men. I don't think a lot of men are doing it. I don't think a lot of men are doing it all. I don't know a lot of men. Yeah.
No, they're not.
So of course they're not complaining. Why were they complaining about doing it all when they're golfing? I wouldn't be complaining either.
Yeah.
There are men who are golfing and complain when they come home from golfing that dinner isn't ready.
Right.
And think that that's completely normal. And women feel guilty because dinner isn't ready because they were taking care of the kids, and they're supposed to be able to take care of the 3 kids while their husband is golfing and also prepare dinner.
I also hate speaking in general terms because I know men that are great family men. They help out.
You're like the I have black friends guy?
No, it's just like, I
know good men.
To say that there's no, like I've seen men, I know that, but I just always like to give it context that like, shout out to the guys who like are doing the work and helping out. It's I grew up raised by a single mother, by 2 sisters who I thought were the coolest people who ever existed when I was young. And
you still know.
Huh?
They're great. Your sisters are the coolest.
Yeah, they're great. They're we're best friends this day. I've women that I've been with, I have looked up and thought, sometimes I question, I'm like, am I just super impressed by like people in my life or like women in my life? Because I just feel like I've met such incredible women over the years Like I was married to a woman who I think is one of the most impressive people ever in my life. There's nothing that she can't do in my mind. Like other than physically, if there's, like, can you carry this or whatever? But like I don't put a lot of value in that. And it's like, all right, she's a small person. It's not because she's a woman. She's just a small person. But like I don't know. I see her as like I would never doubt anything that she can do. My mother had a friend growing up who was literally our handyman. She would cook food for us. Like there was nothing that woman in my mind couldn't do. So I've just grown up around women who I just never thought they had any limitations to them, and men that just disappeared. So it's like I saw all men's limitations and I saw no limitations on women. And yeah, I don't know.
Would you say it's all these women? Has it been easy for them? Do you think that they would have been further than they are right now if they had been men?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean,
then that piece is the whole piece, because I have to work 10 times harder to do what you can get very easily. And so, yes, you see a lot of strong women because we have to be. We can't just exist. Right. I can't just exist and things come easily to me. Yeah. I have to work so fucking hard. So, yeah, men who are raised by women are raised by strong women because there's no other option. Yeah. That's how you survive. So, I think there are a lot of women right now who want to say, yeah, I'd like to not be the strong woman anymore. I'd like to be the soft woman. And I'd like to, have someone take care of me. I'd like luxury. I'd like to have someone cook and clean for me. I'd like to have someone make all of my appointments for me. I'd like to,
without making that their entire image. Like you're supposed to be able to have that when you want it and not when you don't, and be able to move and be dynamic and want
privilege.
Yeah, I pride myself on moving, being a strong person. And if I'm in public and somebody is, I hate to say disrespecting because I'm not just like, respect me, but, like I'll stand up for myself in public, but I'm also, a soft, sensitive person who cries when listening to Ani DeFranco. It's like, but I like being able to do that whenever I want. I can move through that life, but I don't have people in my life that I feel like I need to be anything other than that with. So
that's a privilege.
Are you surround yourself by people who feel like they wouldn't, but how do you find those people? If if your community isn't
I think there's also this mentality growing up on Long Island that your community is a given. Like we're born in a particular place and we live in that place forever. We buy our parents' house, right? We stay in one location and this is where we live. This is where we go to school. This is how we learn. And because it's so comfortable and it's so easy to do that when you're on Long Island. Like that's a good financial move. It's a safe move. It's a stable move. There's no reason not to do that necessarily. So when you are surrounded by people who have all been raised in only that, then of course everybody's going to think that way. But when you're surrounded by people who are where they are, surrounded by friends, not because they've lived there, but because they've chosen them. Like my son, for example, I think he's a really good example as a New York City kid. Every school that he went to, he had to apply for. So he was a performer from kindergarten. So he was always going to shoot for a performing arts school, and the people around him were always going to have the same values and the same belief systems as him, for the most part, because they were all theater kids. They were all drama kids. That's what he was doing since first grade. Yeah. His after-school programs, he was always creating. He was making movies. He was filming. He was taking pictures. He was acting. He was dancing. He was singing. Like, as a boy, surrounded by other straight boys and gay boys and non-binary boys, in this ridiculously integrated culture. Not to say there wasn't discrimination, but compared to how I grew up or how you grew up, he knew no other way. So for him, it was really interesting. One of the reasons why I stopped a lot of my relationships with my friends on Long Island was my son, because I remember going to my friend's house and him listening to the things that were coming out of our mouths as we were talking, and like specifically things about like my playlist and other shit. And we got in the car to go home, and he's like, I don't know how the fuck you hang out with these people. They are so vapid. And I was like, I'd never realized it because I lived in that world. and I lived in my world, and I kind of straddled both of those worlds, and they were so different. And I was able to code switch. I was able to put my Long Island mask on. Yeah. I was able to put my teacher mask on. I was able to put my mom mask on. I was able to put my Bronx mask on. Like every time I had to engage in a different circle, I put on my mask that made me be able to speak that language and engage in that way. Because I had always been, I had lived in 14 different homes before I graduated high school. So I had to be adaptable. There was no, I was born in Brentwood. I wasn't born in West Islip. So like I had to always adapt, and my son always also being in the city and commuting from school to school always had to adapt. You've never had to adapt, ever. Yeah. The world has adapted to you.
Well, my surroundings certainly have, yeah. So I always say like I'm not. I don't want to say successful because successful is arbitrary, but. I'm not rich by any means. And anything, I always say like anything I don't have is my fault. Because,
I say the same thing.
Yeah, it's like I was given everything. I was born with a straight white penis. It's like that's you hit it.
That's the jackpot.
Everything you want is right there. Everything I want is everything is this is the key to the world right here. And I don't have that energy. I don't have that personality. I'm a shy person. Yeah. In new situations, I'm a shy person. I don't have that go get 'em thing, or that I find that person obnoxious. I see that person. I'm like, I don't like you based on just your confidence. I don't like your confidence. It's off-putting to me.
People who are secure in themselves. This is why the whole world hates me. Do you know this? This is
you're
why
confident in yourself.
And because I tell you, if you are spending your time on the internet talking shit about me, it's because you hate yourself. It's not because you hate me. There's something in me that you want and that you can't have, and that's what cringe is, because you're ashamed.
Mostly. That's not always the case.
I think it is.
It's not. People don't only hate people who they're jealous of. That's not.
Okay, so give me an example of someone you hate who you're not jealous of, and we can workshop this.
Oh my God.
Hate is a really strong word.
Yeah, I don't give a lot of
there's someone
energy.
who made an account the other day that says Danielle Gates hater, and the only person they follow is me, and they commented on every single one of my photos. Like that is a something that someone did and said all of these terrible things about me. This happens.
What's the IP? Does it come from the Dominican Republic? Is he Johan?
No, because he wouldn't be able to spell my name.
Google
he
Translate.
spells it Daniela. He also doesn't know how to create an Instagram account. But
wow. Okay. So wait, hold on. We're getting. What was I just saying? Oh, so
tell me someone you hate.
I've never made a negative comment online. I'm not a hater. I think I don't like that. I turn my back on it. It's easy to not let things exist. Yeah. It doesn't feel good to hate watch things. So I don't really hate anybody. I mean, personally, I've hated people because like they've done things personally, but so. Like I would never be jealous of somebody. Like if you did something wrong to me and I hate you, I don't hate you because you did something wrong. I'm jealous of you. Like
well,
you did.
Yeah, so but that's different. That's not a hater. That's having a relationship and conflict.
Right, okay, so
you and I know each other. If we have a fight because we know each other,
yeah, right.
That's not.
Okay,
you're
so
not a hater.
We're not talking about that. So we're talking about like
we're talking about you're watching a television show.
Yeah.
And you hate this person, this character on television so much that you find them in real life in a yoga class and take a picture of them. And then say terrible things about them online.
Sure.
There are people in the world who do that. Apparently, many people. There are many people in the world who engage in the world that way. We might not know these people, but they.
But don't you think that sometimes people just hate somebody because they remind them of somebody who did something that somebody else in their life did, and they hate that personality trait?
Does that sound logical to you?
No, I'm not saying it's logical, but that's not based in jealousy. That's based in this reminds me of a thing that somebody did to me, and I hate that. I hate when people do that. And I hate this
you would have to give me an example of that for me to tell you why it's still based on something that has nothing to do with me and everything to do with you.
A woman was watching your show.
Mm-hmm.
They had been in a relationship with a guy who had a woman friend, and they argue about it all the time, and they hated. He would make the same justifications that you would make about your friend, and you remind them of that relationship, and they hated that person. They love this person.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing keeping them from being together was that he refused to not be friends with this girl that he's been friends with forever. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't he be that? I don't agree with that person. Like, let that go. Like, that's your own problem. But they hate you because you're representing somebody that they hated in their life, and you did.
No, I'm representing an idea that they don't feel safe with. I'm representing a fear. They're afraid
But they're not jealous of that. 'Cause
that
they
a
don't-
fear is jealousy. Fear, like jealousy is.
This is,
rooted-
by the way, this is gonna be an hour-long episode, just so you know.
Well, it could just be 2 parts. We could just
cut
cut
it
it
up
out.
however you want. Yeah.
Jealousy is you have something that I want, and not only can I not have it, but I don't want you to have it. This is a Brene Brown thing. She wrote Atlas of the Heart, and she defines a lot of these like emotional experiences that we have, and she talks about the difference between envy and jealousy. Jealousy involves 3 people. Envy only involves 1 other person. Envy is like, I want what you have. And jealousy is, I want what you have and they have it and I can't have it with you. And that's a self-hatred.
Yeah.
Like, I'm jealous of this other girl because she has a relationship with you that I can't have. I feel inferior.
Yeah. No, and it's funny, this is, again, probably off track, but we've had, not arguments before, we've got times we don't speak to each other and we've been upset with each other over the years, different reasons.
I think it's usually just I'm upset with you, if we're being honest.
No, sometimes I'm upset with you.
When are you upset with? You've never been upset with me.
I
I've never done
was
anything
thinking
to
about
you.
this too because something you texted me the other day, and my initial reaction was like angry at you. I was like, fuck you. You're always like trying to take me down. but here's where it comes from, is that I respect you and I like you and I think that you're smart and I look up to you in certain aspects of life, and I want you to co-sign my decisions, and I want people who I like and people that I respect to think like, hey, I'm great, that's good that you're doing that, and not challenge me.
Oh, okay. This was
So it's
where
like-
you're living situation.
Yeah. So
Sometimes I don't have a filter.
I don't want to be challenged. I want people that I like to just respect me and just to be like, oh, but I want to be challenged because I want to be better. But it feels bad. So I have to fight through that my knee-jerk reaction is like, fuck you, stop. But then I think about it and I'm like, okay, what was the point of that? Why did they say that?
So what you just described is the work that I do. It's like you were triggered by something that I said, and that's the magic buzzword.
But it's only because I like it. I don't care. Like when we started this, like people are gonna hate you, people are gonna comment on you, or I don't care about that at all. I truly believe that I don't care. If I don't know you and respect you as a person, you can say literally whatever you want about me.
So you are saying this, Ryan, coming from where you're coming from. You've never come from where I'm coming from, and there may be a time at some point where you're coming from where I'm coming from, because now this is going to be public, and I want us to have this conversation again.
But you're acting like I've never had somebody say publicly something bad about me. Like I've
You're
been on
tr-
stage before, and people like from the audience, somebody will say something in the audience about me, something even that I'm sensitive about, and I'm like, but you don't know. Like I don't really care what you think
I've
about
had
me.
kids hate my guts. I've had students in my classroom who hate my guts, who
Right.
say shit about me all the time. Being a teacher of
Right, but
teenagers,
that's somebody that you know and like knows you personally. I'm not saying. 'Cause
I think that it is very different when it is an inundation. So I want you just to think about what this might look like. I'm fighting with my partner about Talon, right? I'm fighting about this guy. I also have cameras who want me to be fighting. I don't want to say that they want me to be fighting with this guy, but the more we fight,
Sure.
the more
Yeah,
y'all want to watch
They
it.
do want you to fight,
Right?
Yeah.
They
want
want there to be something interesting.
It doesn't make them bad people. Like you signed up to do this, and you
Yeah.
know what the show is. So like, yeah, it's better TV if
Yes
somebody's
and
fighting.
no. Yes and no. But yes, I signed up
But
for
the only
it.
reason people
but I
watch this is
didn't
because
know.
nobody watches it for a
So
success
I
story.
didn't really know because I had never watched 90 Day Fiancé. So that's the first thing. I didn't know that so there's what you don't know and what I didn't know is that there is a cult following for this show. There are people who spend their entire days and lives watching all of the 90. There's a million.
So I dated a girl who was a huge fan of the show, and she used to try to get me to watch it. And me and her have had arguments about you. But we stopped dating after you got on the show. So I don't know if she was a 90 Day Straight Up fan. I don't know if she watched any of the, because I remember she said at one point she didn't care for one of the offshoots. So I don't know if she only watches 90 Day. But I'm curious if she's like watched the show and like your face has popped up and she hates you because on a personal level because we've like had, we've spent time
this
together.
is the girl who doesn't hate me because of the show. She hates me in real life.
In real life, she hates you because of me because she
I'm
was
your
somebody
friend.
because I was dating her and we were friends and we did like a podcast together years ago and she didn't like that. And she didn't want me to be friends with you or to have this podcast. So I'm sure she saw, we did a photo shoot together and she was like jealous that we did a photo shoot. So I dealt with the same thing you were dealing with was, I want to be friends with this person. It's not a sexual thing. And she didn't like you based on that. So I'm just in my mind. Sometimes I think about like her watching the show and being like, I hate this, this bitch. But it's for a whole different reason why anybody else watching the show.
You know how many people are watching the show with that same mentality? They hated me because I failed their kid in school. They hate me because their boyfriend hit on me once. They hate me because in high school I, spit on their hair. Like
That's a pretty justifiable reason to hate
I'm
you.
not even mad at anybody for hating me for any reasons that they find to be legitimate. What I struggle with is, what are you gaining from that hate? From carrying that with you? From talking about it, from engaging?
Understand.
Like, what are you gaining from? And to go back to what we were talking about, when it's coming from real people in your real life, people that you know, like I read some things and I'm like, oh, that's someone who I saw literally last week. Like someone who I saw last week had a conversation with someone else who had a conversation with someone else who brought it to Reddit, because it's a little bit true, but there's a lot not true. So there's like a long line of telephone. So it's like I have to constantly check the people who are in my life. Like I heard like Kris Jenner hands out NDAs everywhere she goes. Like I understand that because I feel like I can trust no one. So you have like that world. You have the online stranger world that many of them are AI bots. It's computer generated hate. Done by ChatGPT or whatever, AI is doing it. It's people on the street when you go shopping, although I have to say that there's only been one time where someone on the street has like physically or like come to me and been nasty to me.
Yeah.
But other times people take pictures and do things like when I'm not looking.
Do you regret it?
No.
No.
Not at all. Because I've
The
learned
positive
so much.
outweighs the...
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just my own self-development. Like people say that entrepreneurship is the biggest self-development course you'll ever take. Reality television is the biggest self-development course you'll ever take, because it's who you are in real life. It's what everything around you is trying to create, what ends up on screen, and how people respond. Like it's so many different ways of looking at the self that if you are grounded and not, at risk of a mental episode. Like if I didn't do the work that I do, I don't know. Like if I had done this 10 years ago, I'd be in an institution. 100. Not even jokingly. Like I don't even know. I'd be one of these people that are like, call the suicide hotline, because I wouldn't have been able to do this from a fragile place.
One of these people who calls the suicide hotline.
Well, because there's a lot of reality stars who are every day posting like, this is really hard. The hate is really hard. Call this hotline. Call this hotline.
Yeah, I don't know how,
there are people faking their own deaths so that they can hide from it. Like shit's.
Listen, I'm somebody who likes attention. I would love to be famous. Like this,
Really?
Yeah, I'm not like, and it seems dirty. Like
No.
But you understand, like, it's,
Well, you want
that's
a
a
legacy.
that's a negative thing.
You want a
for people to
legacy.
say.
You want to say that you did something.
I don't know
in
that
the
I want a
world.
legacy. I have opinions that I want to, like, I'm proud of and I want to share, and I
So
have
you want them
interactions.
validated.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know where it comes from, but I would love to be, more of a public figure. Like that's why I started stand up, because I do it. I'm not currently doing. I'm doing a little bit. Like I'm getting back into stand up, but yeah. I mean, I would just like attention. Like years ago, I just had to like openly admit, like, yeah, I like attention. I just like, you know what I mean? Like,
And
it's
have
such
you
a dirty
ever-
thing to run you're running from it from all these years. But I refuse to do something I am not proud of for that attention. Like you'll see like TikToks. I'm like, oh, if I did a dance video, like maybe that would hit, and maybe like all these crazy things to try to replicate to get a following. But I'm like, I can't do something is not in me. Like, and there's so many people that I respect that just stayed the course, and they're not huge fans. There's comics and musicians that I love.
Tim Dillon.
Tim
He's
Dillon
a really great example.
Tim Dillon did what he wanted to do. He didn't, Paul Tompkins is my favorite comedian of all time. He's not a huge household name, but he's got a big enough following, and he does what he does, and he can't physically bring himself to do anything other than what he does. And I respect these musicians, and like I always like I would love a small enough audience is fine. I like artists who have small audiences, and I'm like, to be the biggest artist like that. I wouldn't expect that of myself, because like I like art that generates a small audience. Why would I expect me to, like A$AP Rock is my favorite musician of all time. He's got this, a big audience, big enough to live on, but a small audience in comparison.
Do you know what
So-
I'm most excited about with this podcast? Is the commentary about this podcast after this podcast that we could have. Because I
Us
think,
commentary?
yes.
So it's funny you say that. So a friend of mine just put out a comedy special, and we did a like a director's cut where it was me, him, and another comic watching his comedy special, and then commenting on it because like I've known him for years, and so he's putting it out like on his Patreon. But he watched our commentary. He goes, dude, I want to do a commentary on the commentary video. I said we should do that. I said we should just have a podcast where every episode of the podcast is a commentary on the previous episode of the podcast. Like just watch it and pause it and analyze what we're saying. Because that's the problem about what people that are excitable about conversations. It's like, oh, can I stop here? Like I want to comment on that before I forget it. And that's going to be the downfall of this podcast is we're both scatterbrained and passionate about multiple topics.
Like,
it's going to be impossible to stay on track. Like we
do this for 12 hours and then just cut and paste.
yeah, there's a lot of we've left, as they say in the business, we've left a lot of phones off the hook, and like people watching, like you started saying something I was interested in, and you've never went back to that thing. So maybe we do need to rewatch this and revisit those things. But we are over an hour at this point, so why don't we wrap this episode up?
Okay.
And
Yeah, I don't
hopefully the clips that we put together for social media are enough to generate people to want to watch the rest of this. Yeah, that's it. That was the
Cool.
first episode.
The first episode of
first.
well,
episode
it was like
one,
episode 0, episode 1.
Episode, yeah,
One A,
exactly,
one
yeah.
B.
This is
So
right.
episode 0, episode 1A, 1B, and then we'll do. What time is it?
It's another hour.
Okay, one more episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no. Maybe a short episode.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Great.
This is for behind. This is off camera talk. Thank you so much.